Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lightning Bolt Chronicles, or if it's your first time joining us, welcome to the Lightning Bolt Chronicles. I am Christina McCrary on Facebook, aka Xtina McCrazy on TikTok and Instagram, your co-host. Everything else you want to know about me, you can find at that link right there, msha.ke/Xtina McCrazy, because I have 2 other podcasts, merch, and a lot of other interesting things if you're interested. In the meantime, my beautiful co-host.
Hi, magical friends. I'm Poodle Noodle 82 at the Instagramming place. That's all. I'm Erica, and I'm here.
Okay. So
that's it.
Before we jump in, anything we need to circle back to? Any merch to show? Any goody goodies?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, then we will head right into the chapter. We are doing chapter 16, titled Through the Trapdoor. And if you all remember, when they got back to their rooms after that weird detention scenario that they went through in the woods, Harry's invisibility cloak was underneath his blanket, and it said, just in case. So, here we are now, chapter 16. So, they go into exams, and, you know, they're just doing their things. It's getting hot. It's getting toward the end of the year. They're doing, huh? Oh, you're right. Okay, you're right. My bad. I knew I skipped over something. All right. 2 new characters. I know, huh? 2 new characters this chapter. We finally see, I think we've heard of it before, but we finally see the giant squid.
Yeah.
And then the second new character, and we don't meet them, we're just told about them, the stranger in the pub. And okay, that sounds super generic, but I promise it's a pretty significant character once we get into the summary. Yeah. So now they're going through their exams. Summer's coming. It's getting hot. They have both written exams and practical exams. So they're going through their exams, and then the last exam is History of Magic, and they're all finished, and then everybody's all relieved. And so they all head outside, and they're sitting under a tree, and they're chit-chatting, and they're like, oh, yay, we don't have to study anymore, and this, that, and the other. And Harry mentions that his scar keeps hurting all the time, and he's like, you know, it's happened before, but not like this. And Hermione's immediately like, well, go to Madame Pomfrey. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know. What am I going to tell her? Like,
he's obviously very doubtful that Madame Pomfrey knows or can do anything about this very unique scar.
Right. And he's like, I don't know what it is, but I think it's a warning. I think it means danger's coming. And one of my favorite lines from this chapter is when right after that it says, Ron couldn't get worked up. It was too hot. So then Ron's like, dude.
Because this is one of the chapters that makes me, or one of the whole chapters that makes me love Ron so much, because he has so many zingers in this chapter.
This is a great Ron chapter. It really is. Yeah. It's a really great Ron chapter, because I know of another one that's coming up that I know I highlighted to talk about too. But yeah, he's like, you know, Harry, just relax. We're done with exams. The stone's safe as long as Dumbledore's here. Nobody knows how to get past Fluffy. Snape already tried. Fluffy almost ripped his leg off. I think we're good. Like,
I love it. He goes, he nearly had his leg ripped off once. He's not going to try it again in a hurry. And
Wait,
Neville
no.
will play Quidditch for England before Hagrid lets Dumbledore down.
And then Harry's nodding and he's like, yeah, okay, but he's still feeling like there's something that he can't quite get his mind around. And Hermione's like, oh yeah, sure, it's because of the exams. She's like, I woke up last night and was halfway through my transfiguration notes before I realized we already took that test. And Harry was like, yeah, no, I don't think that's it. He didn't think it had anything to do with his work, really.
Yeah.
And so then he sees an owl flying over with a letter, and in his mind, he's like, wow, Hagrid's the only one who sends me letters. And then all of a sudden, he's like, wait a minute.
Ding.
Light bulb. And he stands up and starts to run, and Ron's like, where are you going? And he's like, I just thought of something. We got to get to Hagrid's right now. And Hermione's running along beside him. She's like, why? Why do we got to get to Hagrid's? I love that about them. They're like, oh, we got to go now? Okay. Why, though?
Yeah. They're still going. They're still going.
Yeah, because it says, why, Hermione panted, keep hurrying to keep up. So then Harry says, don't you think it's a bit odd that what Hagrid wants more than anything else is a dragon, and a stranger turns up who just happens to have an egg in his pocket? How many people wander around with dragon eggs if it's against the wizard law? Lucky they found Hagrid, don't you think? Why didn't I see it before? And Ron's like, what? But Harry's still running, and so they're still trying to keep up. So they get to Hagrid's, and he's sitting outside, and he's like, hey, you guys finished your exams, huh? You want to have a drink? And Ron's like, yes, please. And Harry's like, no, we're in a hurry. Hagrid, I got to ask you something. You know that night you won Norbert? What did the stranger you were playing cards with look like? Dunno, said Hagrid casually. He wouldn't take his cloak off. He saw the three of them look stunned and raised his eyebrows. It's not that unusual. You get a lot of funny folk in the Hog's Head. That's one of the pubs down in the village. Might have been a dragon dealer, mightn't he? I never saw his face. He kept his hood up. So now they're worried, and Harry's like, but what did you guys talk about, Hagrid? Did you mention Hogwarts at all? Long and the short of it, Hagrid's like, yeah, mighta. He asked me what I did. I told him I'm the gamekeeper. He asked me if I had any interest in creatures. I told him about Fluffy. They're like, did he seem interested in Fluffy? And Hagrid's like, of course he seemed interested in Fluffy. Who wouldn't be interested in Fluffy? How many three-headed dogs do you see? And so then Harry's like, well, he says, well, yeah, how many three-headed dogs do you meet, even around Hogwarts? So I told him, Fluffy's a piece of cake if you know how to calm him down. Just play him a bit of music and he'll go straight off to sleep. And then Hagrid suddenly stopped horrified. And of course, the favorite Hagrid line, shouldn't have told you that. Should not have said that. Forget I said that. Hey, where are you going? So they immediately take off and go to the entrance hall. And when they get there, Harry's like, we got to go to Dumbledore. And they're like, yeah, because, you know. And then they're like, well, where's Dumbledore's office? And nobody knows where Dumbledore's office is. And so they run into Professor McGonagall, and she's carrying a big old stack of books. And Hermione says, or she asks them what they're doing inside. And Hermione says that they're looking for Dumbledore. And Professor McGonagall's like, what do you need to see Dumbledore for? And Harry swallowed. He's like, now what? And he tells her, it's sort of a secret. Which made Professor McGonagall's nostrils flare, which is never a good sign. And so she tells them that he left like 10 minutes ago. He went to the Ministry of Magic, and he'll be back in the morning. And Harry's like, what? He's gone? Now? And McGonagall, of course, not knowing what they're going on about, is like, you know, Dumbledore's a great wizard. He doesn't just sit around. You know, do you think that whatever you need to tell him is so important that it's more important than the Ministry of Magic?
And at that point in time, Harry's like, yes, it is. Caution to the wind. It's about the Sorcerer's Stone.
At which point, Professor McGonagall drops her huge pile of books. And she's like, how do you know about that? What is it? And then Harry's like, Professor, I know that someone's going to try to steal the stone, and I've got to talk to Professor Dumbledore. And as she's eyeing him with a mixture of shock and amazement, suspicion, it's a shock and suspicion, she tells them he's going to be gone until tomorrow, but they have the stone all protected, and that there is probably that. What did she say? She said, she says, I don't know how you found out about the stone, but rest assured, no one can possibly steal it. It's too well protected. And she sends them back outside and tells them to go out and enjoy the sunshine and the no more exams.
Right.
And so they go, they're talking about it, and they're like, all right, well, tonight we go down because Snape's going to go get the stone. It's going to be tonight. And then Snape walks by, and he's like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, and he's like, people are going to think you're up to something.
Right.
And so and then he says, you don't want me to take more points from Gryffindor, do you? And Harry flashes or whatever. And so they go outside, and then Snape called them back. Huh?
He warns them, too. He warns them. He's like, any more nighttime strolls.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So it says they went back outside, but then Snape called them back. And he said, be warned, Potter, any more nighttime wanderings, and I will personally make sure you are expelled. Good day to you. And so they go back outside, and this is where they see the... Oh, no, it was earlier when they were outside when they saw the squid, because...
That was after exam.
When they were outside earlier, they saw Fred and George playing with the giant squid when they went outside, when they were like, oh, they saw people all hanging out outside. Anyway, so they make a plan right then and there. And Ron and Harry are like, Hermione, you got to hang out outside of the teacher's, they call it the staff room. I was going to say the teacher's lounge, but they call it the staff room. Because if anybody sees you there, you could just pretend you're waiting for Professor Flitwick and tell him you want to talk about answer 14B or whatever. Hermione's like, oh, shut up. But then she agreed to go. So she's going to watch Snape. And then Harry and Ron decide they're going to go wait by the third floor corridor to make sure nobody goes there. So they go. But when they get there, they're outside of the door. And Professor McGonagall comes, and she's like, I suppose you think you're harder to get past than a pack of enchantments. This is enough nonsense. She's like, if I hear you're over here again, I'll take 50 points from each of you. Yes, Weasley, from my own house. So Harry and Ron went back to the common room. And then Harry was like, well, at least Hermione's still waiting outside the staff room, which cues the opening of the common room door, where Hermione comes in, and they're like, what the heck? And she's like, I'm sorry, Harry. Snape came out and asked me what I was doing. So I said I was waiting for Flitwick, and Snape went and got him for me. And I've just gotten away from talking to Flitwick, and I don't know where Snape went. And Harry's like, okay, well then I guess that's it then, huh? And the other two stared at him, and they were pale. And he says, hey, I'm going to have to get out there tonight and try to get to the stone first. And Ron says, you're mad. And Hermione says, you can't. After what McGonagall and Snape said, you'll be expelled. And so Harry's like, yeah, so don't you understand? I got to go get the stone before Snape gets the stone, and Voldemort's waiting, and maybe Voldemort's going to try to get the stone too, and who knows, and all this stuff. And so he goes on and on and on. And Voldemort killed my parents, remember?
And then I really like this part, like the perspective of who cares about house points, who cares about this and that and whatever. It's the reality of it that if Voldemort gets the stone,
and he's like, and even if I die trying to do it, at least I tried to stop it. Don't you understand? Like, and then Hermione's like, well, you're right. And Harry's like, I'll use the invisibility cloak. And it's just lucky I got it back. And then Ron says, will it cover all three of us? And Harry's like, all three of us? And he's like, oh, come off it. Do you think we're going to let you go alone? Of course not, said Hermione briskly. How do you think you'd get to the stone without us? I'd better go and look through my books. There might be something useful. But if we get caught, you two will get expelled too. Not if I can help it, said Hermione grimly. Flitwick told me in secret that I got 112% on his exam. They're not throwing me out after that. I love Hermione. So they go on about the rest of their afternoon, knowing that once everybody goes to bed, they're going to sneak out. So they're doing their thing, and they're hanging out in the common room, trying to act all nonchalant until everybody goes to bed. And once everybody kind of starts slowly drifting off to bed, Ron says, hey, you should probably go get the cloak. And so Harry runs upstairs and he gets the cloak. And he sees the flute that Hagrid gave him for Christmas. And so he grabs it and puts it in his pocket thinking, oh, we might be able to use this. And so he runs back down to the common room and he's like, we better put it on here on all three of us before we go out and make sure that it covers us all, because if Filch sees one of our feet, we're going to really be in trouble. And then all of a sudden they hear a voice from the corner. What are you guys doing? And Neville pops up from behind an armchair holding his toad. And they're like, nothing, Neville, nothing. And they hide the cloak behind their back. And Neville's like staring at them. And he's like, you're going out again. And Hermione's like, no, we're not. Why don't you go to bed, Neville? And he's like, you cannot go out. You'll get caught again. Gryffindor will be in even more trouble. And Harry's like, look, you don't understand. This is really important. And Neville's like, not really trying to hear it. He's kind of looking desperate. And finally he says, I won't let you do it. I'll fight you. And he stands in front of the portrait hole. And so at this point, Ron loses his temper and he's like, what? Neville, get away from that hole. You don't be an idiot. And he's like, don't you call me an idiot. I don't think you should be breaking any more rules. And you were the one who told me to stand up to people. And Ron's like, yeah, but not us.
What's that?
No, you don't know what you're doing. So Neville drops his toad and he's like, come on, go on then, try to hit me, I'm ready. And Harry turns to Hermione and he's like, do something. And Hermione is like, Neville, I'm really, really sorry. And puts the Petrificus Totalis curse on him. So he full body binds and falls to the floor. And falls on his face, but they turn him over and he's got this look of horror in his face. And Hermione's like, I'm so sorry, Neville. And Harry's like, we have to, Neville. There's no time to explain. And Ron's like, you'll understand later. And they stepped over him and pulled on the invisibility cloak and headed out the portrait hole. So now they're like, if there are omens, this can't be a good sign.
Right.
Of how things are going to go if this is how it's starting out. But we got to do it. So they get there, almost there. But then on the very last staircase, at the first staircase, they spot Mrs. Norris. And immediately Ron's like, can we kick her just this once? And Harry's like, no, don't kick Filch's cat. And then they didn't see anyone else until they got to the staircase that was literally leading up to the door they needed to go to. And then who do we have? Mr. Peeves bouncing around, and he's just bobbing around, and he's loosening the carpet so that people will trip when they go up the stairs. But, right, as Peeves tends to do. But he realizes that there's someone there, and so he calls out, and he's like, who's there? I know you're there, even if I can't see you. And
are you a goosey or a ghosty?
or we little beastie. We student beastie. And then he says, should I call Filch? I should, if something's creeping around unseen. And then Harry has an idea all of a sudden, and in a hoarse whisper he says, Peeves, the Bloody Baron has his own reasons for being invisible. And Peeves almost falls out of the air in shock. Peeves listens to no one. Peeves does not ever comply. but Peeves is for some reason afraid of the Bloody Baron. So he's like, all right, the Bloody Baron has his own reasons for going unseen. I have business here, so you go away and don't come back here tonight. And Peeves is like, oh, so sorry, your bloodiness, Mr. Baron, sir. My mistake. I don't see you. Of course I didn't. You're invisible. Forgive old Peeves. This was a joke, sir. I will most certainly stay away from here. And then he rose up in the air and he said, hope your business goes well, Baron. I'll not bother you. And he took off. And Ron's like, that was brilliant, Harry. So now they're there. They get to the door. And when they get there, the door was already ajar. So Harry says, well, there you are. Snape's already got past Fluffy. So when they go inside, underneath the cloak, Harry says, if you guys want to go back, I won't blame you. You can take the cloak. I won't need it now. And they're like, don't be stupid. We're coming with you. So they push the door open and they go inside. And the dog, is he awake or is he asleep? Low rumbling growls. Dog's nose is sniffing madly in their direction, even though it couldn't see them. So they were still under the cloak. The dog couldn't see them. The dog was awake, but could smell them and was sniffing around. And they're like, what's that at his feet? And Ron says, it looks like a harp. Snape must have left it there. And so that's when they realize that you have to play the music, because the moment the music stops, the dog seems to wake up. Right. So he says, all right, well, here goes nothing. And he pulls the flute out of his pocket and he starts playing what's not really a tune, but as soon as he starts playing, the dog's eyes start to droop. And so he slowly starts to fall asleep. He fell to his knees. He slumps to the ground. He's asleep. Ron tells Harry to keep playing as he goes to open the trap door. And they look down inside and realize that they can't see anything. It's just going to be a drop. So Ron's like, Hermione, you want to go first? She's like, nope. And Harry motions to them because he's still playing the flute, but he motions to them and tells them, I'll go first or whatever. Ron's like, you want to go first? You're sure? I don't know how deep it is. So Harry gives Hermione the flute so she can keep playing. And in the few seconds while they switched over, the dog twitched a little. So they had to make sure to keep playing. Mm-hmm. And then he fell back into a deep sleep. So Harry climbs down into the trapdoor and he lowers himself as far as he can. And then he's like, if anything happens to me, don't follow. Go straight to the owlery and send Hedwig to Dumbledore with a letter.
Why didn't they use Lumos?
Because they're 11 years old and they shouldn't have been in the trapdoor in the first place.
But they already knew Lumos, didn't they?
Yeah, but they're also 11 years old. So their full frontal cortex is not fully developed. And if Hermione didn't think of it, then it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And she was playing the flute. She was busy playing the flute, okay?
All right.
So he hangs all the way down as far as he can. He tells Ron, if something happens to me, go send Hedwig to Dumbledore. And he says, I'll see you in a minute, I hope. And he drops down and he's falling down. And then he just falls flump. And there's like a soft plant that he lands on. And he yells up to the trap door, which now looks postage stamp size because that's how far he's fallen down. And he's like, it's okay. It's a soft landing. You can jump. So immediately Ron jumps and he lands next to Harry. And he's like, what is this stuff? And Harry's like, I don't know, some kind of plant. So they land and so Ron lands and they're like, come on, Hermione. And they hear the music start and a bark just as Hermione, makes her jump. And then she lands right next to Harry. And she's like, oh, wow, we must be miles under the school. And Ron's like, yeah, lucky this plant's here. And then Hermione shrieks and she's like, Lucky, look at you guys. And then they look down and notice that the plant has started wrapping itself around them and they hadn't even noticed. And both of their legs are pretty much already wound up. And Hermione pulled herself up real quick and ran toward the wall and watched as horror is watching in horror as the boys are trying to free themselves from this plant that's trying to wrap itself around their necks. And then Hermione's like, wait, stop moving. I know what this is. It's Devil's Snare. And so they're like, oh, Ron's like, oh, great. So glad you know what it's called. That's great help. She's like, shut up. I'm trying to remember how to kill it. And Harry's like, hurry, because I can't breathe. And so Hermione's reciting to herself, and she's like, Devil's Snare, Devil's Snare. What did Professor Snout say? It likes the dark and damp. So light a fire, Harry choked. And she says, yes, of course, but there's no wood. Ron loses it again, and he's like, have you gone mad? Are you a witch or not? Hermione's, oh yeah, right. And she pulls out her wand.
I love it.
That's why I said, because they're 11 years old and they just didn't think to use Lumos. So she pulls out her wand and she shoots her blue flames that she's, famous for or whatever, and the plant unravels itself and they're all pulled free. And so then Harry's like, whew, we're so glad you pay attention in herbology, Hermione.
Right.
And then Ron's like, yeah, and lucky Harry doesn't lose his head in a crisis. There's no wood. Honestly. And Harry's like, all right, guys, this way, come on. And so they head down this passageway. And Harry's reminded that there's a dragon underneath Gringotts, which also goes miles underneath the ground. And he's like, oh my gosh, what if there's a dragon? Like, Norbert was bad enough and it wasn't even fully grown. Like, what are we going to do if we come across a dragon? But then they hear something, and it's a soft rustling and clinking sound that seems to be coming from up ahead. And they're like, do you think it's a ghost? And I don't know. It sounds like wings to me. There's light. I can see something moving. So they get there and they get to a brilliantly lit chamber with a ceiling arching really, really high above. And it's full of these small, bright, jewel bright birds fluttering and tumbling all around the room. On the opposite side of the chamber was a heavy wooden door. Do you think they'll attack us as we cross? Said Ron. Probably, said Harry. They go across. They realize the birds don't attack them. They go to the door. They try to open it. Obviously, it's locked. Hermione even tries the Alohomora. It's not working. And then all of a sudden, Ron's like, now what? And Hermione's like, the birds can't just be for decoration. And so they're watching the birds and they realize the birds are glittering. And they're like, glittering? And then Harry suddenly realizes they're not birds. They're keys. They're winged keys. Look, broomsticks. We got to catch the key to the door. But there's hundreds of them. And Ron looks at the lock on the door and he's like, look, it's a big silver key, probably kind of old-fashioned looking, whatever. And then as they're looking around, Harry realizes that he sees one that has kind of a bent wing. And he's like, there it is, right there. And so he's watching it as he tells Ron and Hermione what to do. So he tells Ron to come from the top, Hermione to come from the bottom. He's going to go straight across. He's going to catch it. Of course, that's no problem for him because who is he? He's the youngest seeker in a century. And this key is bigger than the golden snitch. So he's got his eye on it. They do that to block it in. It goes toward the wall. Harry crunches it against the wall and has it. They go down. They open the door. And they're through the next door. Incidentally, the key that they were looking for was a big one. It was silver and it had bright blue wings. And the feathers were crumpled on one side.
Psychotic the moment that they touched the broomsticks?
No, that's a book versus movie moment.
No. It says the bewitched keys darted and dived so quickly it was almost impossible to catch.
Yeah, but they never attacked them like they did in the movie. It says they landed quickly. Harry ran to the door. He shoved the key in. It worked. When the lock clicked open, the key just took flight again, and it was looking totally battered because it had been caught twice, but then they just go through the door. So the next chamber is super dark. Huh?
No, it's just it's true. They don't attack the door.
And so they go through the door and it's super dark. But as they step into the light, they realize that they are standing on a life-size chessboard. And Harry's like, well, now what do we do? And Ron's like, well, isn't it obvious? We have to play across the room. And they could see that they were on the side of the black pieces. The white pieces were on the opposite side. And behind the white pieces, there was a door. And then Hermione's like, well, how do we play? And Ron's like, I think we have to be chessmen. And so he walks up to one of the black pieces and asks, he touches the knight who comes to life. And so he asks it and it nods. And so Ron's like, all right, so let me think for a second. Let me put this all together. And they just wait and let Ron do his thing. He's like, no offense, because neither of you are very good at chess. And they're like, yeah, we're not offended. Tell us what to do. So Ron decides he's going to be a knight. He makes Harry a bishop and Hermione a rook or a castle. And they start playing the game. Well, first Ron's like, usually white plays first. Let's watch. And then a white pawn starts moving. And he's like, yep, here we go. And so they're off and running. And they're playing. A couple of times, Ron like just saves Harry and Hermione before they get gotten by another. Because if you know, with wizard chess, the pieces beat each other up and drag each other off the board. So,
they are completely just broken up.
Yeah, so a couple of times Ron has to save Harry and Hermione real quick before they're gotten by the other team. But then they get to a point where Ron's like, well, it's the only way. He's like, I've got to get taken. And they're like, no, don't do it. And Ron's like, it's chess. You have to make some sacrifices. He's like, that leaves you, Harry, to checkmate the king. And Harry's like, bet. And Ron's like, do you want to stop Snape or not? And he's like, Ron? And he's like, look, if you don't hurry up, he'll already have the stone. And they realized there was no alternative. So Ron's like, okay, are you ready? He goes, now don't hang around once you've won. So he steps forward. He moves forward. The white queen comes up and bonks him on his head. He falls out. He must be knocked out, but they can't run to him because they're still chess pieces. Right. So Harry makes his move, and the king takes off his crown and gives it to Harry. And that then indicates that the game is over and Harry has won. Then the chessmen part and, oh no, he laid it at Harry's feet. He threw it at Harry's feet. He didn't give it to Harry. And so the chessmen parted and bowed and the doorway was clear and they look back at Ron, but they have to go on. So Harry and Hermione run through the door and up the next passageway. And Harry's like, he's going to be all right. He's going to be all right. What do you reckon we have next? And Hermione said, well, we've had Sprouts, which was the devil's snare, and Flitwick must have put charms on the keys. McGonagall transfigured the chessmen to make them alive. That leaves Quirrell and Snape. Mm-hmm. They had reached another door, and as they push it open, a disgusting smell fills the air. And they're like, oh man, this is so gross. And then they look, and what they see is a big old troll, even bigger than the last one, you know, the one they took out in the girls' bathroom. But it's out cold, and it has a bloody lump on its head. And they're like, hey, I'm glad we didn't have to fight that one as they pass through. And they're like, come on, hurry up, because we can't breathe. So as they get to the next door, they're hoping that there's nothing really frightening in there. But when they walk in, it's just a table. And on this table are 7 differently shaped bottles standing in one straight line. And Harry's like, okay, this is Snape's. What do we have to do? And as they step over the threshold, a fire springs up behind them in the doorway. And it's not just any fire, it's a purple fire. And at the same instant, a fire springs up at the doorway in front of them, and it's a black fire. So they're trapped. So Hermione notices that there's a roll of paper, and she opens it up and reads it. And it's kind of long, but you want to read it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Danger lies before you while safety lies behind. 2 of us will help you, whichever you would find. One among us 7 will let you move ahead. Another will transport the drinker back instead. 2 among our number hold only nettle wine. 3 of us are killers, waiting hidden in line. Choose, unless you wish to stay here forevermore. To help you in your choice, we give you these clues for. First, however slyly the poison tries to hide, you will always find some on nettle wine's left side. Second, different are those who stand at either end, but if you would move onward, neither is your friend. Third, as you see clearly, all are different sizes. Neither dwarf nor giant holds death in their insides. Fourth, the second left and the second on the right are twins once you taste them, though different at first sight.
And Hermione's like, brilliant! It's not even magic, it's just logic. She's like, a lot of magicians would be stuck in here. And Harry's like, yeah, aren't we stuck in here? And Hermione's like, of course not. Everything we need is on this paper. 7 bottles, 3 are potions, 2 are wine, 1 will get us through the black fire, and 1 will get us through the purple fire.
Bing, bang, boom.
Harry's like, but how do we know which one? And Hermione's like, just give me a minute. And so she's going through and she's pointing at bottles and she's doing all these things. And of course, she figures it all out. And she's like, all right, the smallest bottle will get us through the black fire toward the stone. And Harry picks it up and he looks at it and he's like, but there's only enough for one of us. There's hardly one swallow. So they look at each other. And Harry's like, well, which one gets you through the purple flames? And Hermione points at the rounded bottle at the other end of the line. And he says, okay, drink that. Go back, get Ron, grab brooms from the flying key room. They'll get you out of the trapdoor and past Fluffy, go straight to the Owlery and send Hedwig to Dumbledore. We need him. I might be able to hold Snape off for a while, but I'm no match for him, really. And Hermione's like, but I know, right? But Hermione's like, but Harry, what if you know who's with him? And Harry's like, well, I was lucky once, wasn't I? Maybe I'll get lucky again. But either way, he's determined. Like, there's no other option. He feels like he has to do this.
Yeah.
So she dashes at Harry and she throws her arms around him. And he's like, Hermione. And she's like, Harry, you're a great wizard. And he's like, I'm not as good as you. And he's kind of embarrassed. And she's like, me? Books and cleverness. There are more important things. Friendship and bravery. And, oh, Harry, be careful. So Harry's like, you drink first. You're sure which is which, right? And Hermione's like, yeah, I'm positive, and takes a long drink out of the bottle. And he's like, it's not poison, right? And she's like, no, but it's like ice. And so she goes and walks straight through the purple fire. And Harry's like, all right. So he takes a deep breath and he picks up the bottle and he turns to face the black flames. And he says, here I come. Drains the little bottle, and it felt like ice flowing through his bottle. So he walks forward, he braces himself, and the black flames, he can't feel them, but he can see them licking his body, but he can't see anything. And then he comes out in the other side into the last chamber, and there's somebody already there, but it isn't Snape, and it isn't even Voldemort. And that's where the chapter ends. Bum, bum, bum.
The chapter ends in massive suspense.
Literally the last line. There was already someone there, but it wasn't Snape. It wasn't even Dumbledore. I mean, Voldemort. Bum, bum, bum. All right.
Okay.
So much book versus movie. So much. Are you ready?
Yeah, so much.
Okay, book versus movie. So first of all, they don't show us the troll or the potions. They don't show us those. In order of what?
Can we go back to the beginning?
Oh, okay, go ahead. Go back to the beginning.
they don't tell us anything about the tests. Like literally the end of year exams are one line in the movie where the three of them are walking and Hermione is just like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I heard that Hogwarts end of year exams were dreadful, but and then Ron's like, speak for yourself, Hermione, right? That's all we get about the end of year exams. Whereas in the book, we get McGonagall's test is transfiguring something into a cat into a snuff box, and then Flitwick has his test is making a pineapple dance, and Snape's is a forgetfulness potion, and Binns' exam, like so many little details there.
Yeah, like they're super stressed out because it's fully exam time. And you don't get any of that in the movie.
Right.
Of course, there's no Peeves.
Of course, there's no Peeves, no fake Bloody Baron Peeves incident.
Nope. I'm trying to remember. Do they actually use the invisibility cloak when they go to the third floor corridor?
They do, I believe so.
In the movie? I don't remember.
I want to say they're actually running away from Filch. And no, that was the first time when they ran away from Filch and got into it. I don't remember either.
When they discovered Fluffy the first time.
Yeah. But when Harry grabbed his invisibility cloak and he grabbed the harp the flute that Hagrid made him for Christmas, that part is not in the movie either because they just use the harp that's bewitched that's there.
Yeah. It stops playing, and that's how they realize that the dog will wake up when it stops playing, because that's when the dog drops that big slobber on Ron's shoulder in the movie.
They did use the invisibility cloak because when the dog was huffing and puffing, the cloak flew off of them, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think the dog blew it off.
Yeah. So one way or another, both in the book and the movie, the cloak, again, is left in that room. So keep note.
So they jump down into the devil's snare, and another book versus movie moment. Yes, Hermione's the one. I don't know. The little jingle goes something else. Devil's snare,
It's
something about
fun, but we sulk in the sun.
That. And so she like does some spell where it's like sunlight. It's not her blue flame. And it's a big flash of sunlight, and they fall through the bottom of the plant. Whereas in the book, she uses her signature blue flames to let them loose, and then they go down like a corridor. So that's a book versus movie moment.
Yes,
then when they get to the flying keys, and you mentioned that too, like it's different in the book versus the movie. Whereas in the movie, once they catch the key and go to the door, all the other keys come flying, and they go through the door real quick, and then all the keys like slam into the door in the movie.
Yeah,
but that didn't happen in the book.
To attack them, like pelt them.
Yeah. And actually, if I can point out here, Hermione actually can fly. She just doesn't like to. This is one of the few times where you will see Hermione fly. In the book, not in the movie. I don't think she did in the movie. Because I think in the movie there was only one broom, and Harry just did it on his own while they waited on the ground.
I think that he touched the broom. Like, it was interesting to me in the movie, it kind of depicts that Harry can sense the magic, that Harry can sense something kind of not okay, because he doesn't automatically grab the broom. He kind of hovers his hand over it. And it's to me, it was very reminiscent of future Dumbledore. And when we kind of get to know more about Dumbledore and his ability to sense when things are magical.
Yep.
Yeah.
Specifically, what Dumbledore says is magic leaves traces.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So he's kind of cautious.
Yeah. So when I saw that movie hit like Harry Potter kind of just being cautious about grabbing the broom, it almost felt like that too. Like he could feel that something was wrong. But yeah, that's another book versus movie moment. There's only one broom as opposed to there being more brooms in the room.
And that the keys attack in the movie and they don't in the book.
Right. But the chess,
And then
also in the chess room, there were some book versus movie moments. Ron doesn't ask the chess piece what to do. He just does it. He senses it.
There's already empty spots for them. And he puts them on the empty spots.
Yes.
And then he does play the game and he does get taken out. But he doesn't say, he says, in the movie, he says, it's got to be you, Harry. You've got to be the one to go on. And then in the movie, Hermione stays with Ron. And then when Harry goes through the other door, he's in the chamber because they don't do the troll or the potions in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's just Harry by himself because Hermione stays behind with Ron.
At the end of the chess game, when Harry wins, in the movie, the king has like a sword and he releases the sword to Harry to show checkmate. But
rather than taking the crown off and dropping it. Yeah.
So.
And then that whole conversation where he's like, you go back and you guys get brooms and you fly out and all of that. None of that happens. Because when Ron, actually, I think Ron does tell them he's going to have to get taken. And they're like, no. And he's like, I have to. There's no other move. When I'm done, Harry, you move whatever, 3 moves to the right or something like that. You'll put the king in checkmate. We'll win the game. And they're like, okay. And so, and in the movie, is it the queen? I don't know if it's the queen. I know in the book it was specifically the White Queen. I don't remember in the movie if it was, but whatever it was, thankfully it took out the horse because Ron was the knight, but he was on the horse. And so and she took out the horse. And when he fell, he knocked out. And immediately Hermione tries to run over and Harry's like, no, we're still playing. And so they're both like looking at Ron like, ah! But Harry goes over, he wins the game, the king drops the sword, they run over and check on Ron first, and then Hermione's like, I'll stay here with him, you go, Harry. And so he goes through the door, and then that's the chamber that he walks into where someone is there who's not Snape or Voldemort.
Right. And
All right. Takeaways.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways from this chapter?
Honestly, like I said at the very beginning, this was one of my absolute favorite Ron chapters. It really shows like snide little remarks, his like I don't know, just brilliant little comments, you know, his like quick wittiness. And just like you said, for 11-year-olds, sometimes their brains don't work well, but other times they're incredibly mature for their age. Where
sounds like normal 11-year-olds.
Stupidly so.
Sounds like normal 11-year-olds. Like brilliant and so dumb at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. I had 2 takeaways for this chapter. And the first one is, again, I think I said this for one of the previous chapters, but just how down that trio is for each other. Just like, all right, like when he jumped up and started running to Hagrid's and they're like, oh, we're going to Hagrid's? Okay, well, Harry, why are we going to Hagrid's? As they're running to Hagrid's. Like, they just, okay, what? We need, got you. Like, they are there, and I love that. And then the second takeaway for me, which will remain a theme throughout the rest of these books and this story, and everybody who has read them knows this, they would not get anywhere without Hermione. Now, Ron did play a big part, and Harry had his little part with catching the key and all that. But for the most part, they need Hermione. Because she's always the one, minus the moment where she forgot she was a witch and there was no wood. She's always the one who remembers some kind of random fact from some kind of class that ends up saving their butts.
Yep.
And so those were my two takeaways.
All right.
All right. Uh-oh. So you know what that means.
That it's time to make magic?
All right.
Let's go.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So we have a couple of different kinds, sizes, and colors of keys. We've got glue, markers, ribbon.
If you guys haven't figured it out, when she said she had keys, she's making winged keys.
Yeah. And I in order to make the wings, I don't know. I thought about it, and I'm like, how am I going to make the actual wings hard and like bend? And some people on the internet print on like projector paper, that like laminating paper. I did not have that, and I wanted to use something that I had handy, so it was like one of those clear files is what I used. And it was easy to put on the computer so that I could trace the wings from the computer.
Oh,
which
okay.
was super handy to do it that way. You'll see if you switch. So there it is on the screen, and just went to town tracing. And then that way it's also really easy to choose your size based on the size of your key, because you can, zoom in, zoom out, minimize, maximize like the picture. So it's so easy. Let's move on to the next one when you're ready.
How do you even find these things?
So that's what it ended up looking like, and I used different markers to see what I would get. Now, I really liked the one on the bottom, but the marker would not stay dry. Like, it wouldn't dry. It just like, it would smudge. So unfortunately, I had to go with the top one as the one that I went with, because it actually dried. And that's what they looked like. I made some silver ones because the book said silver. I made some gold ones. But based on the fact that my keys are the colors that they are, I didn't really like the silver ones. And those are the keys. I found the keys at my Sedia, which is like another form of Daiso, like the dollar store. And I already had the ribbon. And this project literally cost 200 yen because I already had everything. And there is what it looks like on the Christmas tree. Yes, my Christmas tree is still up, so whatever.
You add new ornaments to it every 2 weeks. It has to be up so you can add new ornaments to it every 2 weeks.
Exactly. There they both are. One of the keys is gold and the other one is a little bit more bronzy. So again, that's why I chose the gold wings.
But they're so cute.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked them the way that they turned
They
out.
came
And
out really cute.
yeah, and it's such a simple craft. I think anyone can do this. Whatever your craft level is, you can do it. Promise. Okay, I can show you the real ones. The only thing that I would say is to be very careful with setting. So it's like this, right? But how are you going to set it for it to dry and for the wings not to move? So I found, like, how can I? If you have like a fat pen of some kind and it's laying flat on the table, then you can put it so that it's resting the wings on the pen. And in this way, it'll be able to dry. Because if the key flops over flat, then the wings are going to flop over and it's not going to dry where the wings are like up and pretty. But now that they're dry, look super cute.
That is really cute.
And so
Aww.
simple. And here's the other one. This one, the key is the bronze colored key. It's way fatter. So actually what I did is I kind of made this part of the wings a little bit fatter so that it would have more leeway, like more give. But yeah,
They came out really cute. They look so cute hanging on the tree.
yeah. And very, very simple. Just make sure to test your marker that it doesn't smudge. So, like, those are my 2 points here, like tips. Test the marker on the plastic, make sure that it dries overnight, and then give it a little smudge test. If it smudges, I would say scrap it. Use a permanent marker of some kind, or like this metallic marker, and be careful when you set it to dry. That's it.
Okay. Well,
So
I have
easy.
Sharpies, so
Also,
hopefully Sharpies won't smudge.
you can find the keys on Amazon. You can find the keys at what is that? Temu or Shein or whatever. They sell them. They actually sell them in giant bags of like 50, I think. So, yeah.
Okay. We'll see how
Any
that
questions?
goes. Nope. Seems pretty
Pretty
straightforward.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, then you know what it's time for? Hallows or Horcruxes.
Give it to me.
I think I'm going to go with the one that's relevant to this chapter.
Okay. We like relevance.
Now, we already did. So this Would You Rather, which I'm getting from the actual Harry Potter Would You Rather book, has 4 choices, but we already did 2 of the choices. So I'm just going to give you the 2.
Oh, okay.
So this one says, would you rather face Fluffy, battle a troll? And if you remember, we already did a Hallows or Horcruxes where we said, would you rather battle the 3-headed dog or the troll? So would you rather play wizard's chess or complete the potions puzzle?
Oh, easy. And I have a feeling we're both going to choose the same answer. The puzzle. Duh. I like chess. I can play chess. I can't play chess. I mean, I know how all the pieces move. I can beat a novice. I am a novice though. So I would much rather go with logic. It's way more up my alley to sit there and think about things logistically and try to figure out a puzzle like that as opposed to trying to think 6 or 8 steps ahead and beat someone in chess, especially to save my life.
And so that is the key right there. So, Erica, you know this already. When we were growing up in my house, my dad loved chess. And my dad would line up the chessboards and play us all at the same time. So I haven't played in a very long time, but I used to be pretty decent at chess because it was something that we did a lot in my house. We all knew how to play. We all know how to play chess. My late sister, my living sister, and my little brother, we all know how to play chess. Funny part about that, later we learned he taught us all how to play and played us all at the same time because it made him feel better because my mom was the only person who could beat him and he didn't really like playing with my mom. So, so even though the idea of playing life-size chess sounds really fun and all that, it's the whole life and death thing and the like, you know, fact that in Wizard's chess, the pieces actually take you out and you would have to actually be life-size standing in the game. I think my odds are better with the logic puzzle.
Exactly. This one is the guaranteed win, right?
Yeah. And that's why I said for this chapter, it was so great to see Ron shine for a second. Like immediately he was like, hold on, let me think. And they were like, okay, yeah, no problem. No offense taken, no nothing. That's Ron's forte. And so I love that this chapter showcased something for each of them, but they ain't going nowhere without Hermione.
And how they can honestly trust each other throughout the process. Like they have,
or like they're so diplomatic when they talk stuff out. Like even if they don't agree, and they'll be like, "But this and this, and but this and this." Okay, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, let's go with this then. They just always figure it out, and even if it ends up being 2 against 1, that third person will go with it because I'm not leaving you guys to do this alone. Like, and I love that for Harry, who's never had anybody ever.
And of course, like you said, they can't do anything without Hermione, but she does have her moments, her dumb moments, like when she forgot she was a witch.
Yeah, but that is hilarious because I could just see Ron being like, "Are you a witch or not, woman?"
Yeah. And Harry has that moment as well because like at one point in time, I can't remember exactly when, but Harry has that moment too where it's like, dude, you have magic on your side. Oh yeah, in the future.
You can do magic now.
Yeah. And this was all in book 4 where we're going to find this out. But it's hilarious. They have these moments where they forget that they're in a magical world.
But then that's also Ron's strong suit because Ron grew up in the magical world. So he'll immediately be like, "Hey, stupid, where's your wand?" I mean, not stupid. He doesn't call him stupid, but he'll just be like, "Where's your wand?"
Yep.
Like,
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. All right. So that concludes chapter 16, which means, I know, Erica, I just saw it flash across your face. What does it mean?
That we're coming to the last chapter of the book.
The next episode will be the last chapter of this book. Then we will do one full book summary episode. And then we will move into season 2, where we start with the second book and its Chronicles. All right, Bestie, tell them where to find ya.
Portal Noodle 82 at the Instagram place. Bye, magical friends.
And you can find me at Christina McCrary on Facebook or Xtina McCrazy on TikTok or Instagram or any of the other lovely socials listed at this link right here, because in addition to co-hosting this website podcast. Well, yeah, I host the website as well. But in addition to co-hosting this podcast, I co-host another, and I have another. So to find all things McCrazy, go to msha.ke/XtinaMcCrazy. If you watch Thursday Night Live, you know that is my milkshake, but that I do not want all the boys in the yard. All of our podcasts are presented to you guys by Sarcarrogance Media Group, SMG or SMD. Have a magical, wonderful 2 weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.